This man is destroying our community. That's what Karen screamed, her voice sharp and shaking, as she called 911 in the middle of a quiet afternoon by the lake. She pointed at me with trembling fingers, fury etched across her face, while I was simply sitting on my brand new fishing dock, line in the water, a warm coffee cup beside me, the breeze carrying the scent of pine and fresh water. What Karen didn't know, and what no one else around us knew, was that I was the one who wrote the very laws she was trying to use to get me arrested. I was the one who signed off on the environmental and safety regulations for every fishing dock in this state. And in her blind rage, Karen had just kicked off a battle she could never win. I once thought life would finally slow down after walking away from a 12-year marriage filled with endless arguments and cold silences that weighed heavier than any words. I sold everything I didn't need, moved out here to a small lakeside cabin, seeking a simpler life. A morning coffee with mist rising off the water, the soft breeze rustling the leaves, evenings spent watching the sunset while waiting for a fish to bite. There was only me, the lake, a fishing rod, and a simple wooden dock I designed and built to be sturdy, safe, and beautiful. A place to sit and let the wind brush against my skin, letting my worries drift away with the ripples across the lake. No city lights, no honking cars, no meetings filling my calendar. Just peace, until Karen showed up. Karen, 58, HOA president for a decade, had built her identity around controlling every inch of this neighborhood, every blade of grass, every parked car, every neighbor's late lawn mowing, or any small violation she could sniff out through her oversized kitchen windows. From there, she could see my dock, clean, solid, professionally built, a quiet statement of independence right in front of her eyes, reminding her every day that someone had done something she could not control. And so, she decided to call 911. Her voice cracked with anger, and her face was red as she shouted, "He can't build that! He's lowering our property values! He's going against our community." Neighbors started peeking out, some recording on their phones, posting to neighborhood Facebook groups, eager for a taste of local drama. Karen's finger was still pointed at me as her eyes glinted with a strange satisfaction, hungry to see me crumble under her power. You know, some people are just waiting for an opportunity to feel powerful, ready to ruin someone else's life just to prove they matter. For Karen, this dock wasn't really the issue. The real issue was she couldn't stop me from building something she didn't approve of. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car pulled up, red and blue lights flashing quietly against the calm surface of the lake. An officer stepped out, scanning Karen, then turning to me, a middle-aged man sitting quietly on a dock, coffee in hand, the lake undisturbed around him. Karen stormed toward the officer, voice shrill with triumph. "Arrest him! He's breaking community laws! He's threatening our safety!" The officer turned to me, cautious but calm, and said, "Sir, can you please stand up and show me your paperwork?" I put my fishing rod down, stood up slowly, calm and unbothered, because I had prepared for this moment long before the first board of this dock ever touched the water. Karen thought she had won. She thought she had backed me into a corner. She didn't know she had just started a war against the very person who wrote the laws she was trying to use against me. It started quietly, the way storms always do. After the police left that day, politely but firmly telling Karen there was nothing they could do without proper documentation, I thought maybe she would move on. Maybe she would realize she couldn't control everything and everyone around this lake. But I had underestimated Karen. Each morning, as the mist curled off the water and the sun spilled gold across the glassy lake, I would walk down to the dock with my coffee, let the wooden boards creak softly beneath my feet, and feel that moment of peace I had fought to find in my life. A place to exhale the remnants of my past, broken promises, long nights of arguments, the hollow echo of a house that was never truly a home. I found peace here, at least for a few minutes each day. But Karen would not allow peace. At first, it was the small things. I would catch the flicker of movement in her oversized kitchen window, blinds shifting as she peeked through binoculars to watch me on my dock. Her silhouette was like a dark shadow behind the glass, standing there for hours, scribbling notes, snapping photos, measuring with a laser rangefinder she bought just for this. Every day, I could feel her eyes on me as I tied new fishing lures, as I sipped coffee, as I cleaned the railings of the dock I had spent months planning, building, and ensuring it would last longer than I ever would. This dock was supposed to be my sanctuary, my reminder that I had built something good after tearing down everything else in my life. Instead, it was becoming a battlefield. One afternoon, I saw her outside for the first time since the police incident. Karen was wearing her HOA uniform. Perfectly pressed pastel shirt, crop pants, expensive sandals, and that frozen smile that never reached her eyes. She was holding a clipboard, tapping a pen against it as she walked slowly along the shoreline, pretending to inspect the grass, but her eyes never left my dock. I nodded politely, giving her the benefit of the doubt, but her smile tightened, and she raised her phone to take a picture before turning away. The next morning, a letter arrived, delivered by certified mail, the envelope thick with official-looking papers and printed in a font designed to intimidate. It was from the HOA, of course, but I didn't need to see the return address to know it was Karen's doing. I sat on the dock as the sun rose, steam rising from my coffee, and read the letter, the words as cold as the morning air. Notice off, Violation. Your structure has been determined to disrupt the aesthetic harmony of the community. Daily fines of 500 will be applied until remediation is completed. Aesthetic harmony. That was the phrase Karen had latched onto, the hook she planned to use to tear down everything I had built. I laughed softly, shaking my head at the absurdity of it. This dock, this simple structure I had designed to blend with the lake, was somehow an affront to her sense of control. For most people, that letter would have been the beginning of fear, of panic, of scrambling to avoid financial ruin. Most would have torn the dock down to stop the mounting fines, or begged the HOA for a compromise. But Karen had picked the wrong person. Because while I might have been a quiet man with a fishing rod, living in a small cabin by the lake, I wasn't just any neighbor she could push around. I was the one who had designed the environmental guidelines she was misquoting. The one who had trained state inspectors on how to enforce these laws fairly. The dock I had built wasn't just legal. It was a model of compliance, a testament to what responsible development should look like on these lakes. Karen didn't know that yet, but she would. Karen showed up at my cabin's front path on a crisp Tuesday morning, the clouds mirrored perfectly on the glass, still lake as dawn stretched its pale light across the water. I was sitting on my dock, coffee warm in my hand, the line in the water, savoring a rare moment of peace before logging on for work. I heard the soft slap of her sandals on the stone path before I saw her. Karen approached, wearing her HOA uniform. A neatly pressed pastel shirt, cropped slacks, expensive sandals, a clipboard tucked against her chest, and that fake smile glued to her face. But her eyes weren't smiling, they were sharp, hunting, assessing. "Good morning, Ethan." Her voice was sweet, but it made the hairs on my arms stand up. I set my fishing rod aside, giving her a polite nod. "Morning, Karen. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Her gaze flickered past me to the dock, the concrete footings I had poured, the high, grade-treated wood railings, the carefully aligned planks that would outlast any storm this lake could throw at them. Her eyes paused on the coffee mug resting on the railing, and I caught the faint twitch at the corner of her lips. A flash of irritation she couldn't quite hide. "I've noticed you're building quite the modern dock out here," she said, her tone edged with fake admiration. "Very different from the traditional look we usually see around here." I kept my voice calm, smiling lightly. I wanted something sturdy, safe, and that would blend with the environment while lasting for years. I made sure I followed every guideline before I started. Karen tilted her chin slightly, her smile faltering just enough to reveal the discomfort beneath. "Oh, you reviewed the regulations yourself. How thorough." The way she said, "thorough," was like an insult, as if she couldn't stand the idea of a neighbor knowing the rules better than her. The HOA president for over a decade. She stepped back, folding her arms across her chest, her tone shifting to the authority she loved to wield. "Ethan, are you aware that all waterfront structures must be approved by the HOA before construction begins? We have very strict guidelines to protect the aesthetic integrity of the community." I took a breath, holding her gaze without flinching. "Karen, I've carefully reviewed the HOA bylaws, county codes, and state environmental guidelines. This dock is fully compliant, and there is no violation of any applicable law." Her eyes narrowed, a sharp glint of challenge flashing. "Well, we'll just have to see about that, won't we? Sometimes people think they understand regulations better than they actually do." Karen turned and walked away, her shoulders squared in a silent promise that this wasn't over. I stood there, watching her disappear up the path, the calm of the morning draining from the air, as if she had sucked it away with her presence. I knew in that moment that Karen would not stop until she proved she was still in control of this neighborhood. 3 days later, the HOA office called, informing me that I was in violation for building a structure without prior approval, despite the fact that my dock met every requirement under state law. That same afternoon, I received a thick letter in my mailbox, stamped with the AOA's logo in heavy ink, trying to project authority with every word on the page. "Notice of violation, your dock has been determined to violate HOA guidelines due to lack of prior approval, as outlined in Section 6.2 of the Community Code. Immediate removal of the structure is required, and a daily fine of 500 will accrue until compliance is achieved." I placed the letter on my kitchen table, looking out the window at the dock, where the lake gently lapped at the concrete footings, the boards bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. For most people, a letter like that would trigger panic. They would scramble to tear down the dock to avoid crushing fines, terrified of a legal fight with the HOA. But Karen had picked the wrong person to intimidate. Because while I might have looked like just another quiet neighbor with a fishing rod and a love for peaceful mornings, I was not a man who could be easily pushed aside. I was the man who helped write the environmental laws she was now misquoting, who trained state inspectors on how to enforce them fairly, who understood every comma and clause in the statutes she was using to threaten me. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, opened my laptop, and logged into the state's environmental compliance system. Something Karen didn't even know I had access to. I pulled up every relevant law, every environmental assessment, every county permit, and the detailed notes I had taken long before I ever laid the first board of that dock. Karen didn't know it, but she had just declared war on someone who had spent 15 years ensuring that people like her couldn't abuse the system. I spent that night drafting a response that wasn't just a reply. It was a legal dismantling of her entire accusation. I cited the HOA bylaws accurately, highlighting property owner rights under state law, attached environmental compliance reports and certifications from the Department of Natural Resources, included my fully approved permits, with official seals from the county office, provided drone images proving the dock met setback and environmental standards, highlighted how Karen's interpretation of the regulations was factually and legally incorrect, supported by case precedents. The email's subject was simple: airy, response to notice of violation, fishing dock. Before I clicked send, I took a sip of whiskey, looking out over the lake, where my dock rested peacefully under the moonlight. The next morning, Karen read that email over her morning coffee, her perfectly manicured finger scrolling through paragraph after paragraph that she could neither refute nor understand. I could almost picture the way her eyes would narrow, her lips tightening as the realization crept in. Who exactly is Ethan? But even then, Karen wouldn't stop. Because for Karen, this was no longer about a dock. It was about control, about reminding herself that she was still the queen of this lake, still the enforcer of order, and she couldn't accept losing. Karen began calling emergency HOA meetings, rallying her loyal board members, whispering to neighbors that I was dangerous, that I was using government power to bypass rules, that I was corrupt. She sent out emails to every homeowner, laced with veiled threats and false claims, demanding community action. She thought she was about to crush me, to stand in victory, proving she was still untouchable. But what Karen didn't know was that every call, every email, every whisper she spread was being documented, saved, and prepared for the day when it would all come crashing down around her. Karen didn't know yet, but she was about to walk into the biggest mistake of her life. A community meeting with the press present, where she thought she would destroy me, but instead, it would be the place where Karen would destroy herself. The announcement came in on a Thursday afternoon, slipped into my mailbox on HOA letterhead so thick it felt like they had printed it on the heaviest paper they could find just to emphasize how official it was. CO Memu Mainichi and HOA emergency session regarding unapproved waterfront structure. Attendance strongly encouraged. It was scheduled for the following Thursday evening at the community center, and the note made it clear the meeting would address the ongoing violations and abuse of government position by Ethan, though it conveniently left out my last name. No doubt an attempt to turn me into a symbol of everything wrong with the system, rather than a real neighbor they were trying to destroy. I knew exactly what Karen was doing. She wanted a show. She wanted me humiliated in front of neighbors, in front of her loyal HOA board, in front of the local news she had called, pretending to be the defender of community standards. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I understood that sometimes you have to face a bully in front of their audience to reveal who they really are. In the days leading up to the meeting, Karen went into overdrive. She was in full campaign mode, knocking on doors with her clipboard, repeating the same lines. He's abusing his position. He thinks he's above the rules. He's destroying the value of our community. Her emails flooded the neighborhood group, each one more dramatic than the last, filled with vague accusations. We have a duty to protect our community from government corruption. This dock is a symbol of lawlessness and disregard for our shared values. We will not allow our lake to be ruined by one man's arrogance. She even leaked to the local Channel 7 reporter, promising an explosive story about a government official misusing his position to bypass environmental regulations. The promise of scandal was too good for the reporter to resist, so they confirmed attendance at the meeting, camera crew and all. Meanwhile, I prepared quietly, not with threats, not with angry emails, but with documents, recordings, and truth. Because unlike Karen, I had nothing to hide. I gathered my state-issued permits, stamped and signed, proving the dock was legal. Environmental impact assessments from 3 agencies clearing the project. HOA bylaws showing no rule requiring prior approval when state permits were present. A letter from the Department of Natural Resources clarifying that I had followed every required process. Screenshots of Karen's inflammatory, false claims in the neighborhood group. And most importantly, the recorded phone call Karen had made to my supervisor, in which she explicitly admitted, "I don't care about the permits. He embarrassed me, and I won't let him get away with it." Thursday came. The parking lot was already full when I arrived, the glow of camera lights spilling through the windows of the community center. Neighbors streamed in, some curious, some excited by the promise of drama, some uncomfortable but too curious to stay home. Karen was there early, pacing near the podium in a bright pink blouse, smiling too widely as she greeted each neighbor, whispering, "Thank you for supporting our community," while glancing at me with cold satisfaction. Her lawyer, a slick man in a tailored suit, was there too, shuffling papers and checking his watch, looking like he was about to walk into a guaranteed victory. The room was packed. Over 70 people, sitting on metal folding chairs, buzzing with anticipation. The Channel 7 crew was setting up their camera. The red recording light already on, the reporter rehearsing her lines in a low voice as she flipped through her notes. Karen tapped the microphone, clearing her throat dramatically. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to address a very serious issue threatening the integrity of our community." Her speech was rehearsed, practiced, dripping with false sincerity. "As your HOA president, it is my duty to ensure that we all follow the rules that keep our neighborhood safe, beautiful, and valuable." She flipped through a PowerPoint presentation on the projector, showing pictures of my dock, zoomed in to make it look imposing and dangerous, adding phrases like unapproved structure and community hazard in bold red letters. She played the role of a hero protecting the people, presenting herself as the only line of defense against a raw government official abusing power. The audience nodded, some clapping softly. The camera light flickered as the reporter zoomed in on Karen's face, capturing every carefully rehearsed line. Karen finished her speech with a dramatic flourish. "This is not just about a dock. This is about justice. About ensuring that no one, not even a government official, is above the rules we all agree to live by." She turned toward me, eyes flashing. "Ethan, would you like to defend yourself?" I stood up slowly, carrying nothing but a single manila folder, walking to the front as every eye in the room followed me. Karen's smile was triumphant, her arms crossed as she stepped back, expecting me to stammer, to beg, to try to explain away her accusations. I took a deep breath. And then I smiled. "Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everyone here tonight for coming. I appreciate your concern for our community, and I share it." I paused, letting the silence build, letting everyone settle into the moment. "But I also believe in truth. I believe in facts. And tonight, I'd like to share those with you." I opened the folder, carefully pulling out each document. "This is the permit issued by the state for my dock, stamped and signed. Here is the environmental clearance, confirming that this dock meets and exceeds every requirement. Here are the HOA bylaws, which clearly state that when state permits are obtained, HOA approval is not required. And here is a letter from the Department of Natural Resources, confirming I followed every process correctly." I handed copies to the front row, neighbors passing them around, eyebrows raising as they read the official stamps and signatures. Karen's smile was starting to crack. Her lawyer was shifting uncomfortably, flipping through the papers, realizing this was not the easy win he had been promised. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the speaker, and looked Karen directly in the eyes. "And finally, I would like you all to hear a call Karen made to my supervisor last month." Karen's face drained of color. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, clear, undeniable. "I don't care about the permits. He embarrassed me in front of the community. I won't let him get away with it." A gasp rippled through the room. Her voice continued. "I've already told reporters he's corrupt. If you don't fire him, I'll tell everyone your department protects corruption." The silence that followed was heavy, thick, crushing. Neighbors turned to look at Karen, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to anger. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no words came out. The Channel 7 camera zoomed in on her pale face, catching the exact moment she realized she had exposed herself. "Not me." I turned to the room. "This dock isn't illegal. It isn't about corruption. It isn't about destroying our community. This is about one person's personal vendetta and the willingness to lie to tear down someone else's life over a dock that has done nothing but sit quietly on this lake." The reporter raised her microphone. "Karen, do you have a response?" Karen's eyes darted around the room, seeking support, but finding only cold stares and shaking heads. This is entrapment! He's twisting my words!" Her voice cracked, rising to a shrill pitch. "I was protecting our community. You all know how much I've done for you." The lawyer beside her gently touched her arm, whispering urgently, but Karen shook him off, eyes wild. The HOA treasurer stood up, clearing his throat. "I'd like to make a motion for a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership, effective immediately." Hands went up, one after another, a wave of arms raised in the air as the count was taken. It was unanimous. Karen's reign was over. The camera was still rolling as Karen gathered her papers, shoving them into her bag with shaking hands, stumbling as she tried to leave the room. Her lawyer followed her, his face a mask of quiet resignation. The room exhaled as the door closed behind them, neighbors turning back to me, some coming forward to shake my hand, others apologizing for believing the lies. I simply nodded, exhausted, but relieved, knowing the battle was over. But even as Karen walked out that door, I knew she wouldn't stop quietly. Because people like Karen never learn until consequences force them to. And for Karen, those consequences were just beginning. Karen stormed out of the community meeting that night, her face pale, hands trembling as she clutched her disorganized folders to her chest. But I knew she wouldn't disappear quietly. Because Karen, above all else, could never accept defeat. 3 days later, she launched a new wave of attack, this time through a full-blown media campaign. That morning, as I poured myself a cup of coffee and flipped on the morning news for the weather, I heard Karen's voice on the screen. "Our community is under threat from a government official abusing his position, building illegal structures, and intimidating those who dare to speak up." Karen appeared on screen in a light blue sweater, makeup soft. Her eyes carefully reddened to appear as if she had been crying. To an uninformed viewer, she looked like a fragile, concerned neighbor, a middle-aged woman courageously fighting corruption in her small lakeside community. At the bottom of the screen, the headline scrolled relentlessly. "HO President alleges government abuse." I let out a small laugh, but there was a heaviness in my chest. Karen didn't stop there. She emailed every resident, attaching the news clip. "We can't stay silent while those in power think they can do whatever they want. I will not stop until justice is served." She knocked on doors, repeating her polished narrative. "A used his position to threaten me. Threaten the HOA and destroy your property values." And she took to social media, crafting long posts that gained hundreds of shares and comments from people who had no idea of the real story, who believed they were witnessing a brave woman fighting against a corrupt system. My phone began to buzz with unknown numbers, reporters, curious neighbors, and anonymous calls. "Mr. Ethan, we're seeking comment on these allegations." A messenger. "Ethan, did you really use your government authority to threaten Mrs. Karen?" Even colleagues at the Department of Natural Resources received emails anonymously accusing me of self-dealing, demanding an internal investigation. That afternoon, my supervisor called, his voice heavy. "Ethan, you know what we have to do, right?" I closed my eyes, nodding. "I understand." The next day, I received an official notice of administrative leave pending internal review. It didn't matter that I had followed every rule, held every permit, cleared every environmental process with transparency. Once Karen's story had spread, once the media picked it up, a temporary leave was inevitable. I walked out of the office with a small box containing a few notebooks, a framed photo of me standing by the lake, smiling, and my old fountain pen that I had used to sign countless permits, aimed at protecting that very lake. That night, I sat on the dock, the moonlight glittering on the lake's surface, a soft breeze rustling the trees. And for the first time in months, I felt truly tired. Karen had won, at least in the eyes of those who didn't know the truth. I had lost my job, my peace, and for a moment, my faith in the justice I had worked to uphold for 15 years. I thought about selling the cabin, moving away, starting over somewhere else. But then I remembered Karen's eyes at the meeting, the way they gleamed with satisfaction while her mouth preached justice. I remembered her voice in the recorded call. "I don't care about permits. He embarrassed me, and I won't let him get away with it." And then I knew that if I walked away, Karen would find another victim. And if everyone kept running, people like Karen would continue to rule, manipulating half-truths to control and destroy lives. I set my coffee cup on the dock floor, inhaling the crisp night air deeply. And I decided that I would fight back. The next morning I called my old college friend, now a lawyer in New York. "I need your help." He listened silently as I laid out everything. "You still have the recording, right?" "I have it." "And you've kept all the emails, posts, news segments?" "All saved." He let out a low chuckle. "All right, Ethan. She has no idea who she's messing with." Together, we prepared a defamation and damages lawsuit against Karen. My lawyer contacted the news station that aired the piece, demanding they provide all raw footage, internal emails, and warned them of their legal responsibility if they continued spreading false claims. We issued takedown notices for all of Karen's defamatory posts on social media, with a clear warning that failure to comply would result in litigation. I drafted a public letter to the community, attaching the documentation permits, approvals, the environmental assessments, and the recording of Karen's call, so everyone could hear her words directly. The tide began to turn. Neighbors who had blindly supported Karen grew quiet, then slowly turned away. Some messaged me with apologies for believing the lies. The local news station, upon receiving legal notice, was forced to broadcast a retraction, admitting they had aired an unverified story based solely on Karen's accusations. Karen began to panic. She sent me an apologetic email, attempting to explain her actions, claiming she never meant for it to go this far. But it was too late. When she was served the lawsuit, Karen's world crumbled. Her lawyer reached out, offering to settle quietly out of court to avoid a public trial, but I declined. Because I wanted her to be held publicly accountable. On the day of the court hearing, Karen appeared in a light gray suit, looking small and worn, her usual confidence drained from her face. Evidence was presented: the recorded calls, the emails, the posts, the news retraction, and the proof of my fully legal and environmentally compliant doc. The judge ruled decisively that Karen had knowingly spread false information that damaged my reputation and livelihood. She was ordered to pay damages, cover legal fees, and issue a public apology across all platforms and to the news agencies she had mislead. The day Karen posted her public apology, I sat on my dock, coffee in hand, watching the morning sun rise over the lake. Birdsong filled the air, the scent of wet earth after an evening rain, and a breeze stirred the surface of the water. The dock was still there, sturdy, peaceful, a testament to the truth I had chosen to stand and fight for. And I realized that sometimes, to protect peace, you have to step into the storm. Sometimes the storm is the only way to preserve the peace, for yourself and for those who cannot fight alone. Karen's apology was everywhere. On the HOA bulletin board, in the neighborhood Facebook group, on the local news station's website. It was a carefully worded statement, clearly written by her lawyer, but it carried the one thing she had sworn she would never give me, an admission that she had been wrong. I, Karen, apologize for the false statements I made against Mr. Ethan regarding his dock and alleged misuse of government power. I acknowledge that these statements were made without factual basis and caused harm to his reputation and livelihood. Reading it didn't bring me joy. It didn't bring triumph. It brought a quiet, exhausted relief, because this wasn't about crushing Karen. It was about protecting the truth and proving that the law, when wielded correctly, could stand against even the most relentless personal vendettas. The day after the apology went live, the lake was calm, the water perfectly still, reflecting the clear blue sky like a mirror. I stood at the edge of my dock, coffee in hand, letting the soft sounds of morning wash over me: birds calling across the water, the rustle of wind through the leaves, the quiet lap of water against the footings I had carefully measured and set. This dock had become more than just a place to fish. It was a symbol of the fight I had been forced to endure. A symbol of standing firm when it would have been easier to leave. A few neighbors who had believed Karen's stories approached me that week. One by one, they came down the path to the dock, hands in pockets, eyes lowered, offering quiet, genuine apologies. "Ethan, I'm sorry. We didn't know the whole story. We should have asked you before taking sides. I let her fear-mongering get to me. I'm sorry for what you went through." I accepted each apology with a nod and a handshake, understanding that fear and manipulation can cloud judgment, even in good people. As for the HOA, Karen's resignation was immediate and non-negotiable. The board appointed a new president, a quiet, level-headed neighbor named Laura, who made it clear in her first meeting, "We will not let HOA power be used as a personal weapon ever again." She set about rebuilding trust, ensuring transparency in every meeting, opening the books for any resident to review. The tension that had gripped the community slowly began to ease, replaced by a cautious hope. The Department of Natural Resources completed their internal review, clearing me fully. I returned to work quietly, greeted by colleagues who shook my hand with firm, reassuring grips. My supervisor clapped me on the shoulder as I passed his office. "Glad to have you back, Ethan." I smiled, returning to the paperwork, the meetings, the work I had dedicated my life to: protecting the environment, ensuring fair permitting, balancing human needs with the health of the lakes and rivers I loved. In the evenings, I came back to the dock. Some days, I'd fish, feeling the quiet tug of the line and the cool breeze brushing against my face as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple. Some days, I'd just sit, letting the world slow down, letting the memory of courtrooms, heated emails, and news cameras fade into the background. The dock remained steady, silent, a promise kept. Karen moved out of the neighborhood within 6 months. Her house sold below market value. Whispers of the lawsuit following every potential buyer who came to look. She left quietly, without goodbyes, without fanfare, without the power she had once wielded over the community. Some say she moved closer to her children, hoping for a fresh start. Others say she was forced out, unable to bear the stares, the cold greetings, the knowledge that she had been exposed. I felt no satisfaction in seeing her go, only a quiet sense of closure. Life returned to the lake. Barbecues resumed on weekends. Children played near the water's edge, and neighbors waved as they passed by on their evening walks. People began to use the dock, asking politely if they could cast a line or sit for a moment to watch the sunset. I always said yes. Because that's what the dock was for: peace, community, and a reminder that even after the fiercest storm, calm will return if you stand your ground with truth. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, painting the water gold, I sat on the dock with a cup of coffee, watching a father teach his son to fish. The boy's laughter echoed across the lake, the father's patient instructions soft and warm. And in that moment, I realized the fight had been worth it. Not for the apology, not for the legal victory, but for this. For the laughter, the peace, the community that was stronger now because one person decided not to back down. Because truth, no matter how hard it is to defend, is always worth it. After everything, I realized the lake was never just a place to fish or escape the world. It had become a part of my life, a reminder that all good things are worth protecting, even when protecting them means leaving comfort behind and stepping into storms you never asked for. In the days after Karen left, life in our lakeside community changed. People talked more during evening walks, gathered for small lakeside barbecues, and HOA meetings became true spaces for neighbors to share ideas and listen to one another, not a stage for control and fear. I was surprised how often neighbors would come sit with me on the dock, sometimes a father teaching his son to tie a fishing line, sometimes an old man letting his feet dangle in the water, telling me stories of when this lake was wild and empty. One Saturday afternoon, Laura, the new HOA president, found me while I was fixing a fishing line. She sat beside me, eyes on the lake shimmering under the soft glow of the late-day sun. "Ethan, thank you for not giving up. If you hadn't stood up, we'd still be living in fear, too afraid to speak out, too afraid to push back." I was quiet for a moment, offering her a small smile. "I just did what was right, Laura. This community deserved the truth." She nodded, gripping her notebook a little tighter. "I have something I'd like to propose to the OA, and I hope you'll support it." I tilted my head, curious. "What's the idea?" Laura shared her plan to start a regular community lakeshore clean-up and environmental stewardship day, turning it into a day of connection, where neighbors would pick up trash, plant trees along the shoreline, build small playground spaces for children, and place benches for the elderly. I saw the determination in her eyes, the genuine care, and I realized that real change had begun in our neighborhood. The clean-up day arrived on a sunny Sunday morning. Adults and children alike showed up with gloves, trash bags, and laughter echoing around the lake. Some fathers brought small boats to fish out floating debris, while kids raced each other to find stray bottles hidden in the reeds. I stood on the dock, watching them with a soft smile. At midday, everyone rested, sharing sandwiches and cold drinks, laughter ringing across the lakeshore. Laura stepped forward with a portable microphone. "I want to thank everyone for coming together to rebuild our community. And I want to give a special thank you to Ethan, who stood for the truth and gave us the chance to have this day." Applause broke out, and though I felt shy, I nodded, warmth blooming quietly inside me. That afternoon, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on the dock. The lake was calm, the breeze gentle across the water. I thought about everything: the stress of those HOA letters, the tension of meetings where accusations flew like knives, nights alone, wondering if I was doing the right thing, the day in court, standing across from Karen. And then, the latter on clean-up day, the neighbors working together, the trust slowly returning. I realized the fight I had endured wasn't just to protect a dock or clear my name. It was to build a community that knew how to stand up when the truth was threatened. To remind people that, if one person can stand firmly, can fight for what is right, then an entire community can change. And sometimes, it only takes one person to start. That night, before bed, I opened my window and looked out over the lake. The moonlight lay silver on the water. A breeze carried the scent of wet grass and fresh air. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. And for the first time in many months, I felt a complete, quiet peace. Perhaps all of us had encountered a Karen in our lives. People who feel entitled to judge, control, overpower, or even twist the truth just to protect their ego or maintain their power. And not all of us always have the courage to stand up, to say no, to defend the truth, especially when the person against us has the support of a crowd or knows how to manipulate public opinion. But this story is clear proof that when you protect the truth, you are not only protecting yourself, you are protecting justice and fairness for the entire community around you. The moment you step out of silence, accept the suspicious glances, and stand firm when others choose to stay quiet, that is the first step toward changing your environment for the better. And when you remain steadfast with the truth, peace will return, justice will be restored, and those who once lived in fear will find their laughter again. Because truth doesn't need to be loud, it only needs you to stand for it, and it will shine on its own. If you found this story meaningful, please hit the like button right now so YouTube can share this message with more people who might need the courage to stand up for what's right. Don't forget to share this video with someone you believe needs a reminder that they are strong enough to protect what is right. If this is your first time visiting the channel, I invite you to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications because each week, we share real stories and lessons to help you grow stronger, live mindfully, and find more peace in your everyday life. Your support helps this channel continue spreading positivity to thousands of others who need encouragement. Let's build a community that loves the truth, loves fairness, and is willing to stand up for what is right. Thank you for staying until the very end.